Now to Iowa, where there's a state of emergency in Pottawattamie County. We're also learning more about how many were hurt in the storms there and the scope of the damage. Officials say 120 homes and businesses were damaged, and one person is still in the hospital in stable condition after 3 others were treated and released. The most concentrated damage was in Minden, with gas and power under disruption. You'll see the tornado on the ground right there. Look at that video, tearing up debris. Officials are not looking for any outside volunteer help at this time. Well, Iowa Governor Reynolds on the ground in Minden today, taking a first-hand look at the damage. The town of 600 was one of the hardest hit in Iowa. Officials estimate 50% of homes in the community were significantly damaged. One Minden resident recounts how quickly their landscape was turned on its head.
Well, we saw one house, a 2-story house, was pushed about 60 feet off of its foundation. So you can see the basement, and 60 feet away was the house.
Wow.
Then on the south side of the road, pretty much any building was there, and there's about 6 or 7. They're just leveled.
Right now, only residents of Minden are allowed in the town. Well, back in